All right, good morning. So
Morning.
I think where we left off last week, we had provided a counter using the say calendar schedule that y'all had provided with an 8 through 3 4 and the non-voluntary overtime, and then some balls in y'all's court.
So I think one of the things we kind of talked about was costing out and the methodology that y'all use to cost it out. And so what we'd like to see is how you costed it out so that we kind of understand and make sure we're on parallel universes running the mathematics on it and everything.
Okay, how do you have that right? Y'all have. Y'all have.
You know, I don't have time to be going to any funerals during the summer.
Mine?
That hat
That
doesn't sound good. Okay, you've been warned publicly.
Yeah.
Doctor,
Yeah.
we don't need anyone
Just see
new
if the
coming
people
in.
behind us
Yeah.
will.
Starting over. All right.
Eddie to walk through it.
Absolutely, please.
Okay. You don't want me to do it.
I think in the end, we came to pretty much the same numbers, but a couple of things might have changed a little bit. So the first one is pretty straightforward. That's the 8%. We're starting at the beginning of the fiscal year. So it's just the 555 times 8. And then the next one, the 3%, will be starting 6 months in, or April. So I kind of labeled the top columns for the periods. So the math is basically the 555 increased by the 8% that we gave in year one. Then a 3% increase divided by 2. So that the total of the full year, the total is $1,798,000. So I just continued it on out in 6-month sections. And then the next 3% is the 926, which will begin in April of 2026. And basically the math is just the 555 increased by the 8%, increased again by the 3%. For year 2, year 3, and then divided by 2 again. So that the full year of the 3% is now $1,798,000. Year 2 now to $1,852,000. Then in year 4, again the 555 increased by the 8%, increased by the 3%, again by another 3%. Times the 4% for year 4, and then again divided by 2.
Eddie, I guess, and I've pretty much got the same numbers to a T on a spreadsheet that I built.
Right.
I guess the thing that threw me off was the October 27th, the very last column, the October 27th, October of 2027, and then the March of 2028. You list the $1.271 million in there again. Because at that point, this contract's over. And so I'm just wanting to understand, what is the thought process there where you include that money where it's part of the cost of this contract? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, well, we included it because we feel like it's a commitment. It's not going to be on the table the next contract negotiations. So we put it separately, but it's part of this contract, part of a commitment we're making. That's
Okay.
our thought process.
Lily, I think at this time we'd like to take about like a 2 or 3 minute caucus,
Okay.
or make it around 5 minute caucus.
All right.
Okay, so last week when we met, we brought y'all a proposal that we've kind of been talking about, that was this annualized concept going to the April pay raises after the first year. It was something that Ron had brought up, and so I had to kind of shift gears to go through and start costing and see how it worked. So I reached out to Jason Sanchez. Jason is the treasurer for the San Antonio Police Officers Association. He has been intimately involved in their negotiations since 2014, which is kind of when they started this annualized process that they're doing right now. So I spoke with Jason, and I was asking him questions because I was having a slight struggle as to how to calculate this. And Jason said, well, it's basically an amortization process is what it is. Kind of most everything that Eddie alluded to, you've got to make the annual changes for the cost of 1% and then work your way through it and amortize it. And I did mine in years or decimal points of years as opposed to maybe months. And I had looked at y'all's on the costing, and then I looked at mine, and there was a differential, and it was a number that I'd seen before, but I was struggling to figure out where it was. So I sent a copy of this costing sheet that y'all did. I sent it to Jason. I said, Jason, can you take a look at it? Something just doesn't seem right to me, and I want to make sure I've done mine accurately. And Jason got back with me late Friday night, and he had built his own version of the amortization for this. And Jason and I's numbers came out exactly the same. At first, he thought there was a very, very small discrepancy of $14,000. And then he followed up with me Monday, I believe it was, and said, no, I'm gonna withdraw that 14,000, and our numbers came up exactly the same. So when I see what y'all have done for costing it out, the difference is the $1.271 million that's carried over into the next fiscal year. And I had talked to Jason about that to get some understanding. I said, does San Antonio do it that way? And he said, no. I said, does the city of San Antonio agree with the methodology here in the way that this is being budgeted when y'all have done this? He said, yes. So what I'd like to do is just kind of give Jason a few minutes to walk over how they do it in San Antonio and the agreed methodology, and so we can kind of make sure everybody's on the same page from there. So Jason?
Well, thanks, Scott, for the introduction. Yeah, so it very much is exactly how you explained earlier. You take a basic payroll amount where you're talking about the cost of 1% raise is 555,000, right? And so that means your payroll cost associated with the contract lands around 55.5 million, right? And so as you compound that out through the raises, each individual raise hits a new payroll rate, right? And so where the city will see incremental cost savings or cost avoidance, depending on which terminology you want to use, in that 6 months where the raise hasn't happened in the physical year, that's where we start talking about the postponing of the raises saving money for the city side. And so our discussions are very much where you set a payroll rate based off of that raise. If it's a 3% raise, in year 2 it costs 1.8 million, so you're almost at 62 million at a rate, but you've got 6 months savings in there, so you end up at a final cost of around 60.8 million. As you work through that, where the conversation, where the roads separate, right, is when we talk about a 4-year contract, we talk about the cost of the 4-year contract in each of the 4 fiscal years. And to your point, when you talk about making the commitment in that 4th year, the raise coming halfway through that 4th year, the cost of the contract stops during the covered period. And then you start talking about evergreen periods and things like that further on down the road. But where I can see your point about the payroll rate being at a higher dollar value than what you're costing for that 4-year period, you still have an incremental savings of the 1.27 million in that 4th year. And so if you're tacking on that 1.27 million into the 5th year, then you're essentially saying the cost is the same whether you get it in October or April. And that's where the inconsistency, that's where we divert, that's where the paths separate. So very much in our processes, we talked even in a couple of sessions about doing a 3-month or a 9-month deferral just to get to that closer final resting point and finalize things. So that's where the basis of the majority of our discussion ended up, was in that final year costing. And so if you look at it into the 5th year of cost, it would probably be more appropriate to include the other 3 raises in that first 6 months costing. But then you're talking about a 54-month contract, not a 48-month contract. That's right.
Yeah, so, okay, so everything else matched.
Consistent across the board. It's
Yes.
just compounding. It's just math, algebra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do agree with the explanation you just provided. That's why we put the 1.2 million outside of the 4-year total. Our purpose of showing the 1.2 million was to show the total contract value. That's what we've been talking about the entire time. So we do agree with that.
Michael, can you clarify what you mean when you say we do agree with that, so that we understand exactly what
Sure.
you're saying?
Yeah. So year 4, there's a 4% increase, but not until April 1st. So in theory, what Eddie put down was 2% year 4, but it's 4% for the entire total contract. So we do have to show that in our cost modeling, but we did show it outside of the year 4 on purpose, so we're not trying to hide anything. So we just wanted to make sure that that was known on both sides, so we put it on the sheet outside of the 4-year contract total. But for the overall contract, we do have to include that as the total contract cost to the city.
But to the point, if you're including the 4th raise in that 6 months, you should also include the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd raise in that 6-month cost. Because your commitment is not just that last raise, it's all 4 of the raises. And so
Right.
your 5th year cost, the first 2 quarters of the 5th year would include those other 3 raises.
Right.
And so it's just an inconsistency between where we're costing the value, where we're valuing the cost of the contract over the 4-year term versus a 54-month term.
And we could do that. We could add, I mean, all you would have to do to get the 5th-year cost is add the 1.2 to the 7.5 and 1.8 to get your 5th-year cost. And if you would like, we could show that on that last column. That's not a big deal.
No, I think what Jason's saying, Michael, is if you're gonna show the remaining, $1.271 million in that outside the length of the contract, then if you're gonna be consistent, you have to show everything. And I think that's what we're disputing, is that we're not carrying it out through into the next contract. Because I think if you go in May of 2027, when we're back at the table negotiating a new contract, does that mean there's a deficit of $1.271 million that both sides are already starting a deficit with now? And you're in the hole, so to speak, before we ever even get started. You see what we're saying?
Right, right. And the answer is no, we're not in the hole. That's why we were budgeting it for it. And the reason we didn't include the other values in that fifth year is because we wanted to show the total contract value of this the way we model it out. If we were to include that in this model, it would skew the numbers on the total contract value. So instead of $27 million, 27 and a half, it would be a lot greater because we would include that. So we just wanted to be sure to show the actual numbers. And again, year 5 is just, if you add the 2 year 4s and you add the October 27 through 28, that's your year 5. And again, if you want another line with another column on it, so we could show you what year 5 looks like, that's no problem. We could show you that, but again, it's just simple math. Just add those 3. There you go.
Yeah.
2 year 4s and
It would be.
year, right?
What this number went up to. Wait, when you put it over.
See where, so Scott, if we add those numbers in this final column, it'll inflate the contract.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
we didn't want to do that, so that's why.
right. And I think that's exactly what we're arguing by adding in the remaining 1.271. It is inflating the contract, and that's what our contention is on this side.
Sure. So, if you want to talk about just the 4 years, we would look at the total under the 4 years, right? The 26.3 plus the 480. That would be the 4 years.
Right. That's all we're saying right
And,
there.
and we agree, and we agree with that. However, we're missing that additional 2% that we do have to budget for, so we're not behind in the next contract years. And we wanted to show that as part of the total contract value.
Okay.
But in that methodology, then if you take that last raise from April to October, then it's the same price whether it's April or October in your methodologies.
I guess it depends how you look at it. So if you look at the total 26.3, the answer is no. If you look at the 27.5, the answer is yes.
And so when your discussions are with your stakeholders, your council, for ratification purposes, are you going to talk about the 4-year cost? Or are you going to talk about the 4.5-year cost?
Both. We'll show both. Yeah, we're fully transparent, just like we are with you. So we'll share the entire cost. We'll show the 4-year, the total, the annual. We'll have everything.
Anything else? Okay, I think we're ready to caucus, and let me have a discussion with the team, and then we can move forward from there. You ready? Okay, this is a proposal concerning the TMRS COLA. It is now at 30%. And I know there's been some talk during public comment at city council where people had come up and expressed the fact that there were no COLAs for TMRS, and I understand that's a whole nother story. But the language is in our contract that locks the COLA into place. And so this is a proposal that allows adjustment in the COLA incrementally. This proposal does affect 3,500 or 3,000 other employees other than police. Obviously, fire is exempt. So it addresses a citywide problem. I shouldn't say problem. It addresses a citywide group of people, not just police only. And it obviously addresses hundreds of retirees that are already out there. Now, the language, although short in the change or the methodology, which I think may be my word of the day, is going to be methodology. So, is not to swallow this change all in one bite. When you go to the grocery store, you don't get an apple and try to ram the whole thing in your mouth. You take a bite at it, a bite at a time, which is what this proposal would allow us to do, is to go to 70% ad hoc, with the plan change going to ad hoc January 1st of 2024. That would affect every retiree, bringing them up to a 70% COLA, and then allowing the city the next 6 years to go from ad hoc 70% to repeating 70% over the course of 6 years, stair-stepping and increasing along the way to get to that point.
So this was something that was heavily negotiated the last contract, right?
Correct.
So we're 4 years from that, and it was negotiated on the city's end, right? And it was partly how we were able to reform the health insurance to what it is now at 100% coverage. I mean, we're 4 years out from that. I don't see why the city would want to go backwards to it. And also, I mean, the goal was always to get to annual repeating. Why would we also want to go backwards on that 4 years later? I really don't think this is anything, I could be wrong, that's going to be entertained one contract later, right?
Well, and so it was done to make some changes, but this is only a temporary ad hoc and just the mechanism to go back up to 70% repeating. So there's a mechanism there that within the TMRS system that allows to go ad hoc at a lower cost, which we don't want to lower the cost down. We want to incrementally pay a little more to get to annual repeating. The city of San Antonio, for their general employees, is at a straight across the board ad hoc COLA. So this is just the mechanism that's there to stair step our way back up to the annual repeating. No different, I guess, than what was done in 2015 when the contribution rate went from 6% to 7%. We took 2 zeros during that time, but we carried the whole city. And so this is an opportunity that would raise the COLA without the entire burden being on the police department to carry it across for the entire city. Again, it affects 3,500 total employees as of right now, and then hundreds of retirees.
I understand that, but the city proposed this the last contract period for a reason, right? For the savings. So I understand what you're talking about, ad hoc and repeating, but you still want to go backwards to the 70% that was in the contract 4 years ago, right? Wasn't it 70%?
Yes.
I don't have the
Yes.
language in front of
Yes.
me. And again, that was heavily negotiated for, a reason on the city side, right? That was one of the goals of that contract, and in order to meet that goal, the city came forward with the free health insurance, so forth, and why would we want to go backwards from that, especially 4 years later? Are we going to change the health insurance backwards also? You would laugh at me to try to do that, right? We're not gonna, that was a huge part of that contract, just like the health insurance was a huge part of the last contract. We're 4 years out from that.
So I take it this means this is a no then?
This is a no. This is a no. I mean, I can't speak for the entire group. I'm just no, because I was a part of that contract. And, you know, that was a huge part of how we got to the 100% coverage. So, am I mistaken in that?
It's a no then?
Speak to the lead negotiator, then it's a no. I don't want to speak for anybody. But that's,
Okay.
thank you.
I have one of those back.
Thank you.
Okay, this is our counter to the proposal y'all brought to us at 8334 under the annualized system with the pay raises occurring in April after the first pay raise of 8% in October of this year. This is the proposal we gave you the time before. This is a proposal we feel very confident in for a multitude of reasons. It addresses some of the inflation that we've talked about. It addresses, more importantly, the competitiveness and the market that it brings us, not to the very top, but not where we're sitting at the very bottom, and allows us to be competitive in the market, to recruit, but not only to recruit, but to retain what we have on the department. And it brings relief at the same time with the April deferments in the pay raise mechanism or system that it lays out. And as I said before, it's one that we feel very, very comfortable with.
So this is what y'all provided last time, but I guess you're removing the draft overtime and the on-call?
No,
pay?
it'll still be a part of it as well.
So you're just sending us back your counter
Yes,
last week?
yes.
Okay, because yeah, so I was making sure, I thought it was familiar. Yes, this is what we talked about last week, it's the same thing, yeah. Well, we countered that after, right? Yeah,
Correct.
Trying to make sure that's where we're at. And I'm trying to remember, I don't have the market study in front of me, but we're talking, it's 32%, I think we put, what, 18% down, or is that what we put down on the table over the 4 years? Which. Okay. Come back to that. need to caucus, but I think first, I mean, I think when we put down the 8334, right, we said that was pretty much our last, best, and final. We looked at it, it's 28 million over the 4 years. It's almost unprecedented that the city's ever seen a contract that large, right? 18% over 4 years to something that's also unprecedented. It's definitely not happening across the board for all ranks of employees. I don't see how we're going to get to 32%. And, that's kind of why we made it clear that this was as good as we think we can get and sell and what we can afford in that first year and moving forward. But we can talk about it, but I just need to throw that out there before.
Lilia, can you give me clarification on the 32% that you're referring to?
Right? Am I adding that wrong?
22.
22, sorry.
22, yes,
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
22.
That other
I didn't
math,
wanna-
Scott. That's the other.
I didn't want to assume, but.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not the
Okay,
math person.
okay.
I think it's, it looks like obviously we're matching up on the first year, percent difference in the next two. It's that last year especially that we're still 2% apart. But let us talk about it.
Okay.
I think it's good to say that before we walk away from the table. Ready?
We are ready.
Okay. So I have two items to provide y'all. One is the counter on the economic package, and the other one's a completely new counter and related to health insurance, but it's a new item that HR is rolling out for all civilian employees related to tobacco use. So I'm gonna just hand it to you in stacks. I already pulled ours out.
Okay.
So this is the.
Does that mean it's too late to light up right now? Or?
And then I can walk through and explain it here.
You got until the ink's wet. Ink's wet.
So,
Yeah. Is this one, two?
oh, sorry, am I handing you too many? There's just one. Sorry. Oh, 2 pages? That should just be one also. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so on the economic package, as explained before we caucused, we are where we are on wages. The one thing that we did add additional to kind of close that gap in that 18-month gap from the 8% to the next 3%, we propose a one-time stipend of $1,500 payable to all sworn officers October 1st of 2024. And we felt that choosing that date was a way to kind of close the 18-month gap from not having a raise until 2025. So that was the additional add-on to the economic package. And then the other is the tobacco surcharge. And I can have Rebecca kind of summarize it for you if you'd like, or if you want to talk about this one first. That's up to you.
I think I'd like to talk about the financial part first, because I think that's kind of where we started today, but let me get some clarification. The one-time stipend of $1,500, how is this going to be defined, and how will it be rolled out? And at the end of the day, I think y'all know where I'm going. Is this going to fall under the 22%?
I asked that.
Salary.
And it does. Now, it also has an
Okay.
addition of TMRS contribution the city has to make on top of it, right?
Right.
So forth.
So it'll be 22% plus 6% Social Security, or 6.25%,
Yes.
and TMRS, correct?
TMRS.
Okay.
So I didn't want to spend too much time as far as this drafting language goes, but it would kind of be similar to, kind of how we have longevity, which is just you've got to be either have graduated and been sworn in order to receive it. Now we can add some language. Say you have a graduating class that comes out within that year, to say maybe anyone else within that year upon graduation. That way, if you have some people that graduate, I don't know when the next class would actually graduate, but
Sworn officers covers that, doesn't it?
Well,
Right.
yeah, except for an academy.
But if there is an academy in between that time, we want to account for that, then we can add language to account for that.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
We're necessarily trying to exclude the cadets. It's more just when they would receive it would be upon being sworn.
Okay, so, can we change to the tobacco real quick?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess the first thing I see right off is that not only does this section apply to the city employee, but now the city's reaching out and addressing the spouse of the city employee that would also be compelled to regulate to this requirement as well. Is that correct? Is that what I read in the beginning of number 5?
Yes, assuming they're enrolled in one of the city healthcare plans.
Can you speak to the official documentation you referenced in the bottom paragraph? Right. Yeah, can you speak to what that documentation would look like in this?
Okay, so they'd be working with either through Blue Cross Blue Shield, and so there's a program that we already have set up with Blue Cross Blue Shield, or if they wanted to use their own personal doctor, we would have there's a document that we would be providing to be able to give to Kathleen, who is our wellness coordinator, so that we can then show record that they have completed the sensation.
Thanks. I didn't know. I'm not from here.
This is new also. I don't
Okay.
know. It's being rolled out currently,
Yes.
right?
Well, the sensation program has always been part of Blue Cross Blue Shield. So that's something that at any time, any employee that is on our health plan can participate in. What we're trying to do here is that folks that do not want to have the surcharge, they're able to now participate in this, and it's accessible to them, be able to remove that surcharge once they have completed the program.
Okay, so what happens if you don't self-report in 2024, but in 2025, something happens and somehow it's brought to the city's attention that nicotine or tobacco is found in the bloodstream, whatever the case may be of the employee, then what?
So I would think just at that time, we would have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Right now, I don't believe we'd retroactive anything because we're using the honor system. So I really think that we'd have to look at on a case-by-cases to understand, what happened, what is going on. There could be other things that could have affected having a nicotine or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, but I'm just speaking general hypothetical. Somebody says, hey, I smoke, but I personally don't feel it's any of the city's business whether I smoke or not. I've been an employee for 20 years here. I've been on the health care plan, and they don't self-report. And eventually something comes out, and come to find out, yeah, you are smoking, and you should have been paying the $20 because you failed to self-report. What will be the repercussion for that?
Then we're gonna contact them, and then we're gonna probably we'll charge the surcharge going forward. We're not gonna do any retroactive, and I think that's the point that she was making. Is at the point in which it's revealed to us, whether it's through some documentation that we receive from a doctor or through the person that the surcharge is affected. And then we're gonna offer them the same thing, complete smoking cessation program to remove the surcharge.
How are you gonna know?
That's why it's an honor system,
Yeah.
right?
So how would you know if they started smoking?
Well, that was his scenario. I didn't make that.
I'm just reading it.
We typically shouldn't know unless something comes out through maybe they have a random and something comes up in the bloodstream, but we won't know. We won't go looking
Would you
for it.
be,
A fellow employee?
I'm sorry, what?
Fellow employee?
just says that they saw it, we don't have any proof of it. That's
So
why
would
it's
there be a
honest.
hotline where you could report other workers
No,
It'll be
or a
it's
reward?
gonna be self-reported.
No.
We're not gonna dig that deep.
So basically, you have no way of knowing one way or the other unless someone snitches somebody off.
Oh,
I'm not
yeah,
opposed
yeah.
to it, I'm just saying,
I mean, even if they snitch them off, I don't know that that's true, right?
well, that's true.
So
They
I
could just
can't
be
just-
getting even.
Right.
But I'm just saying is, I get it. But there's no way to enforce it.
We didn't put any consequence in there to say that you're gonna get fired if you don't tell us
I
that,
understand
right?
you're charging them for the health costs. The question would be, I assume it's legal or not. I've never looked it up. I'm sure
It's
there's
legal.
court cases over it.
Mhm.
I'm assuming.
It's
So
legal.
anyway, so it's aspirational?
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's not get to use the word. All right.
I ain't hunting nobody down
Yeah.
to see if they
We
smoking
trust
in
that
the
most
parking
people
lot.
will be forthcoming. and honest.
Well, then,
Yeah, we're gonna hope, especially our
Yeah,
fine police
yeah.
officers are being honest, and any other employee as well.
That's it.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And Scott, we can save this one for some of the other ones that I know we still have to talk about. It wasn't like it's contingent for this or
Okay.
anything. Today's the 5th meeting.
Right.
I know we gotta bring.
No,
everything else
and
forward.
we probably have a few more too that we'll bring, but y'all had said you'd kind of like to do the financial,
Right.
so,
I just wanted,
yeah.
before I forget, it's there, that it's on there.
Okay, I think we'll caucus and get back with y'all from there. Okay, this is the counter proposal we have for y'all. So again, this will be staying on the same platform as the methodology we've been working on with the April pay raise system on the deferred cost to the city program. So our counter was in the year 3 and the one-time stipend, again, retaining the non-voluntary overtime language as well. Okay. Can I clarify one thing real quick? I think the last raise, it says a 6%, but 4% in parentheses, just for clarification, that's a 4%. The written word is 6 there, year 4, but it's a 4.
It's a typo.
Ron will be reprimanded for that.
I'll talk to my secretary.
We gave 3 demerits to
My
our
legal
secretary.
assistant. Legal assistant.
One of those seal-eyed policemen catch everything. Can't get nothing past them.
Okay.
Oh, there's the object.
Okay, there's another one.
I would just cutting and pasting.
It's
Yeah.
the second raise.
Oh, the
It's
second.
the second one as well.
That's secretary. You know, you get what you pay for. Part-timers ain't worth a damn.
That's true.
Oh, instead of 468.
The second pay raise is a typo as well. I think it says 4, but there's a 3 there. Yeah.
We're going by the
The
number.
numbers.
I mean, we will defer on the option if y'all want to go with the number or the wording. I mean,
We'll litigate.
this was kind of like a multiple choice type thing. You may want to go line by line and pick one and go with another and.
So rather than caucusing and coming right back, I think that if we can keep the 4% in year 3 to 3 like we originally had it, we'll accept the 2,000 counter proposal on the one-time stipend. So still keeping it at 8,334 as we had it proposed, a non-voluntary overtime, accept your counter to the increase to the 2,000 one-time stipend in 2024. I could write that up, but just
8333.
8,334, which is the original wages that we had.
Right, and so let me, I want to circle back around. I think when we first proposed, if I remember right, we were at 28% with a lot of soft money, and different ideas that we were bringing remedies to problems. And I believe y'all's first proposal was at 13%, maybe with a little bit of soft money and clothing and everything, and now you're at 18. I would just ask that the city, and maybe you've looked at the numbers where you're comfortable on Eddie's laptop, but I think this is a very doable, and it speaks volumes for everybody with the counter that we have brought to y'all. The city manager was here, and you know, expressed the words that he said, and we have foregone a lot of our proposals. And I guess one of the things that hit it home for me yesterday, I mean on Monday when it was raining, was when it was raining for the couple hours that it was raining, and you say, well, Scott, this is a small thing. I know it's a small thing, but it just proves our point. People were making phone calls saying, hey, I'm not going to go to this meeting because it's raining. I don't want to run out through the rain. But our folks were out there working in those cars, getting out, doing the job that they do day in and day out. And this counter shows the appreciation and everything of what these men and women do with this department. And again, if it means y'all need a caucus, I would ask that you take that opportunity to do that. This is a very good deal. This is a fair deal for both sides. I think Peter Zanoni said it best. A good deal when you walk away and you both aren't happy. Are we ecstatic about that, about this counter? No, but we can live with it. And so I would ask that you take the time to caucus and really consider this. This is a good deal for both sides. It really is.
I think what you're saying is fair, but I also think that, I mean, I think I said it earlier, right? It's unprecedented to see those size of a contract that you've seen. So I think we are trying to follow the city manager's expectations, right? And I think he's the one who's given us the authority to even bring the numbers that we have, and to work within that budget. And I understand what you're saying, but don't discount what we have brought forward as well. Is we've never seen that before. It's, you were used to the 7, 9, $1 million contracts. We're at 20, the total 28, 29 million, wherever that's at. So on our thought to counter the wage proposal was that one-time stipend. It wasn't to necessarily, okay, well, let's increase that, but still kind of focus in the wage proposal. We're pretty much set in our wage proposal. We're just trying to find another opportunity, and given that it's one time, it's not going to keep carrying over, way to close that gap in that 18 month and hope that that would incentivize, TA in agreement. So I don't know if we necessarily want to increase that number plus increase the percentage on the wage proposals.
So does that mean we anticipate a counter?
Our counter was that we'd keep the 3, but then we'd accept your 2. So going up 500 on the wage, which I think is valued at what, 1 point, Eddie ran at 1.2, 1 point, going up to 2,000.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1.2 million, going up to the 2,000 is 1.2 million versus the number, I can't remember what we had earlier,
Man,
About 800.
900,000.
Okay, then I guess we'll caucus and get back with you from there. Ready?
All right, ready.
I presume that you typed up a counter?
I did not. I verbal.
Okay, just a quick review then. 8%, 3%, 3%, 4%. Annualized going into the April pay increase after the first pay raise is October of 2023, with a $2,000 one-time stipend October of 2024, and the double time and a half pay for draftable events. We will accept that offer. But Ron would kind of like to go over the rest of the items that we have pending today, because we don't want to have to wait another week and then things either come up or we add additional things or things fall apart, vice versa. So, and just for clarification, one more time, there is no conversation wanting to be had on the COLA for TMRS. Is that accurate? Okay. Okay. So I think we had brought y'all several proposals, the VA language concerning the healthcare when a retiree, the language around the lieutenants, the step and the step increases with the bachelor's degree. I think we had 2 strikes there, 2 sections that we were striking from there. And then we had, what was the other thing?
we had the
Captains.
captains.
Yeah. Removal of the captain serving on association team. Yes.
Did y'all have counters or acceptance of those today?
I have an acceptance, by what I did with the printout of the one on the lieutenant education requirement. It's, on page 30, I know you probably have it. I have to go through this with my department last week, and I placed them after that.
In all your free time.
We went through them all, so I talked about them. I just need to see what I did with it. Unless you have another copy of it, then I can just.
Captain's language.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, so we're good on this one.
Okay.
Talk just a little louder, because senior citizen.
Yeah, we're
I
good.
had to move over a chair.
Oh.
Let me see.
Is it bad?
She's better sure I gave you the right one.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I think this is the only one that we passed over.
All right, Lilia, so we have a TA.
On the Article 10, on the qualifications, Lieutenant.
Okay. And what about Article 3? That went in a long time ago. There was a lot of reasons for it, but captains are members of the bargaining unit. We already have language about supervisors and grievances and all that. This just says they can't be on our team or the grievance committee, but there are union members covered by the contract. And so we're just taking out that prohibition that years ago somebody wanted it. We didn't have.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out the history behind that.
I don't want to sling out John Houston, but wasn't it him? I don't want to throw him under
Well,
the
I'm trying to
fire.
figure
I
out why
like
something
him.
He needs to be thrown under the bus.
I think he's retired, but that was good. But I think, I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Yeah, we met with the chief and spoke about that, and he wants to keep that in. It's the way it works right now, because it does kind of coincide with, like you said, the remaining part of the contract, and the role captains can fulfill as far as representation. But trying to remember if we had any other discussion. No, it was just a total straight. Yeah. I don't know if he knew more of the history on it or not, but he just felt that it was still necessary. Yeah, that's that one.
Your other was the VA and the detective language we had on
I'll hold the VA one because I'm going to express our position on it, but in case you have direct questions for Yvonne. On the rank one, I met with Chief Green and Markle on that last week to discuss it, and because it's still the chief's right of assignment on it, he's trying to figure out why we wouldn't just handle it the same way we handle other assignments, like I think you mentioned SWAT, gang unit, what was the other? You had a few patrol, just other different assignments that are all kind of within policy and how they're going to be assigned and so forth. And I think Chief Green had already been working on that policy, kind of putting that into place and keeping it in line with how the other assignments are managed, because they're not really managed inside the contract also.
Well, there's a couple of differences. One, all the pull-out assignments, all are stipends of which people get paid. This is not adding any, I mean, your FTO dives, also, all of those are pay. So this is not assignment pay. It's a job designation, as if you're on the FTO, I guess, or something, you want to wear a lapel pin or whatever designation. So it's a designation for your assignment. But we want to be clear, because of the title we're using, that it's not a civil service rank. It's not a promotional position, just because we're using the word detective. So I think it's pretty loose in there that he can do it. He's had the policy, but he hasn't come out with it. So, I mean, just on our end, we're just saying that he can do that, but we want to be clear in the contract that, in fact, it says here, chief, you may designate, it's at the sole discretion of the chief, but the designation does not create a civil service rank or a non-supervisory position. That's we clear so we don't end up with a grievance. Because in some departments, these are promotional ranks in civil service positions. We'll be clear, it's a job assignment. Chief can adopt his policy. It's not going to be in conflict with this. But we'll I'm afraid if he just adopts a policy and we're not clear in the contract, we're just a matter of time for someone files a grievance. Take a look at it. I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to make sure we're clear and the members are clear as to what this is.
Yeah, and I think that at least some of them that were presented to me, not all of them are actually associated with pay, although I say the ones that with pay make more sense why they are in the contract, but I think they're only in the contract for pay, not for necessarily the chief's ability to assign someone or remove them from certain, whether it's, SWAT, dive, whatever, right? It's just if you're on it, this is what you get, right? But it's not, hey, the chief can designate you to be in this or not designate, so
Yes.
if we're treating those all the same, then it would make sense that it kind of
It's
stays.
similar, but if he adopts a policy and the contract has nothing in it, that it runs a chance to come afoul of the contract at some point. If we're clear in the contract for what it's not, then he can adopt or not adopt it. But if you just adopt it in a policy and this one says, yeah, well, he adopted that and now I've got this rank or I want to get promoted, I want to get paid, do as you wish. I mean, me personally, I'm not going to fall on a sword over it, but I do think you're putting yourself in a position where we're clear in the contract what it's not. What it is, he'll adopt a policy for that.
What is the timeline?
Could be very short term, just. We were pretty close to going with it till we found out that this was a discussion y'all wanted to have as far as getting it in the contract. I mean, it could be a matter of days.
You're welcome to adopt it. We'll be glad to reference that policy in here, and that can be done before we vote on it.
I was gonna say, maybe that's the route then.
That'd be fine.
Let me talk to Chief
Okay.
on that.
All right.
Maybe the route would be to reference policy.
So, the only other thing I had was that the VA deal, and I don't,
Yeah, so we had a lot of discussion about this going back and forth. There was concerns about the fact that the VA plan isn't necessarily an insurance plan, right? It's just certain, I guess, coverage or the opportunity to get certain medical procedures and so forth, but you're not actually on an insurance plan. So there was concerns of whether city could be designated as a co-insurance, so forth. And it's kind of the reason why the city has gotten away from doing this for any level of employees, fire, civilians, and it's not liable under the PD contract as well. If you're not on the plan, then no one else comes into the plan. And it's kind of more of a best practice that we just want to stay away from that because of those potential issues that could come up, especially when you have a retiree or former employee who at that point really doesn't have any coverage. The only ones that would have coverage would be the dependents. So I spoke with Yvonne about it a few times, and that was kind of the consensus. It's just we should just kind of keep it uniform where we're getting away from that. I don't think anyone now has that ability anymore. There were a couple issues on the fire side years back, and they've been resolved, and that's it. So they're kind of staying away from that practice now moving forward.
I can come to an accord, I can have a red line done in probably the next 15 minutes and send it to y'all. And that would give, we have a meeting for next week if we had to have it. And if you feel the need to come in, but it would give you a chance before you leave the building, just to scan through, it's all red line. And if I miss something, then we can fix it right here, but I mean, it just says this is where I think we are. And that way, everybody can look at it, because there may be something we missed. And there may be things, typos or things we may clean up once we get the subsidy deal done. But I've been keeping it in here, so I can do that.
Had y'all had any opportunity to discuss the tobacco use surcharge
No, we're not really interested in that.
for either set of employee or spouse, or just in general
Collectively in general.
because of the costs associated, reporting concerns?
I think first and foremost, the thing that came across was the fact that it reached out to the spouse, and kind of what y'all have alluded to before. The spouse isn't responsible to the city in any way. I know it's a benefit to be on the insurance, but it's kind of the overreach thought process of dictating to a spouse, and so it's I'm not saying we would entertain it, but our reflection on it was, if it's, why not make it a reward so that if you are a non-tobacco user, then to reduce the premium as opposed to penalizing somebody that is a tobacco user, was more of our thought process. I think everything is always that we try to move forward with is a positive as opposed to the negative, and that's kind of where we were at on it.
I could speak to it, but I disagree about the negative connotation. The goal is to help them stop smoking or to provide resources to encourage cessation of smoking. So that is a positive. It's not meant to be a negative in any way. It's to help ensure that the workforce is healthier overall, right? And provide resources and encourage them to take advantage of those resources that are already available. So I don't want to put it out like it's a negative thing, because that's not the goal. It's not about penalizing anyone, right? Because the charge stops the moment you complete the program. The program is there to encourage you to get the resources to stop
And
smoking.
Yvonne, I understand what you're saying, and I guess that segues the door into something else. I guess the other concern is, if we started smoking, then what's next? Okay, fatty foods or deep fried foods, and you can say, well, you're being a little extreme, but we have now opened that avenue. And then, so is it going to be drinking? You can only drink it so many times a day, or then you're in violation of this. And to me, I think the biggest problem is we've seen over time policies that come to something like this, but there is no definement as to, if you are in violation of it, then what's the repercussion? And I know in listening to y'all, you're saying it's not a gotcha, but you are paying a penalty per se of a higher premium by $20. But what if in the process, that was my question, you don't self-report, and then for whatever reason something happens and you find out, whoa, well, what is the repercussion? And it's not defined, and that leaves it open-ended at this point. Well, then I can already hear this. Well, you were untruthful on a government document. Next thing you know, I've got a felony charge filed against somebody, and it's not a path that we're willing to go down at this point.
Even if we define that?
Probably even if you defined it.
I'd ask.
Huh?
Just thought I'd ask. But I understand what you're saying on that. Get it.
Nah, I'm done with it.
So do you want me to draw, or do you have a version of this drawn up a little cleaner, or can I do that and then?
If you'll draw up another one, I'll print it out and we can do it from there.
Okay.
And then I guess that in the lieutenant one,
Yes, and those. Go ahead and do that. Quick. And then I'll do it. I'll play with the language on the stipend.
Ron?
No, I appreciate it.
I'm almost done with this red line. I'll be done in just a second.
Is there anything else immediate? Because I was thinking I could go back and try to work on the one-time stipend language. That way we could separate that out, so you can see what it looks like, so we can add it in.
Put it in there.
Oh, you put something in there already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
You can adjust it, but
Oh, okay.
I've got it in there. I'm almost done.
even better. Okay.
And there's no connotation here, but there'll be some green under deals in here. These are just some notes about some things that have to do with check the numbering, or all the others we're fine with. They'll be in here, but there's a couple where I just you had some notes about maybe moving some stuff.
Oh,
And I just happened to use green because I was using red and blue. I didn't appropriate your image or your name. Let's see, I'm almost here.
Yeah.
Hoping I could get some copyright money.
I'm sure you've got some order on it. So the only thing I show, how do you want to leave this issue with the detective language? Can I just leave ours in there and then you feel free to see if we can massage it? Okay, rather than me try to figure out what you're thinking now, so.
Lilia, do you have any objection? I guess while Ron's doing some cleanup, maybe you're doing a little bit of cleanup if we caucus. I just want to kind of come back around with the team and see if there's any last minute things we want to bring forward or do they have questions about so we can kind of go from there.
No, that was some time.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, sir. So we have, here's the TA on what we agreed to. It's the 8334. It also includes the non-voluntary overtime event, the double time for that, or as it was proposed. And also on the one-time stipend for $2,000, we're actually working on, there's language, actually, it's not here, sorry. But basically, it's going to cover all officers that are coming through an academy that are sworn before
Okay.
the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
If you get that, just send me that and I'll add the red line. I forgot about
Yeah. Yeah, that-
coming October 1st. That's a good point.
Let me just do Here, let's get a copy. You guys also presented to us a proposal on shift pick. We discussed it, and if we can't necessarily agree to it because it doesn't meet up with what's worked for best practices so far. Chief Green can speak a little bit more towards that. Sir.
Yeah, it's just, I know it's a topic of discussion and dilemma when every time the Operation Shift Pick comes around and trying to find a balance where we don't overload certain shifts with specialized units that take a lot of time off for training, and then it puts those shifts at a serious shortage, and then trying to backfill those shifts, it just creates a lot of problems. And so that's not something that I'm sure the chief would want to give up.
So, Chief, maybe I think part of the problem is that when each time a new deputy chief goes in there, with shift pick being every 6 months, they change this, and then somebody comes in and they change that, and there's no continuity. And I know sometimes there need to be adjustments. I understand that, but sometimes there are changes, and the officers are just looking for consistency so that, hey, when I go to shift pick, this is what I can expect, that it's going to be this way, and instead of going next time it's not that way. Maybe in the operations manual, something could address that just to give them some continuity at the same time. Because it seems, like I said, it seems to change each time there's a deputy chief change to operations.
Yeah, I get that. And that could be something that potentially they could put in the operations manual.
Okay.
But then again, conditions change. Conditions change too. Things change. We're looking at increasing the number of officers on shifts.
Right.
As we increase the size of the department. So hopefully that'll have a little bit of a effect to maybe reduce the issue that comes up with those specialized positions picking.
Okay. No. Yeah.
One other item on the non-voluntary overtime event, we wanted to include just one additional portion in there when it says double time and a half for holidays. We just wanted to include city designated holidays.
Do you have any objection to that?
Is that different than what's in the contract holidays?
No, those are.
Yeah, I do agree. Because otherwise, you have the holiday in city designated. But, this would be my question. City designated usually goes to non-sworn employees who Christmas falls on a Saturday and they give them Monday off. or Friday off. It doesn't generally apply on the sworn side because they're working the holiday. So I'd rather just say you won't get both if you want to say that. See,
Okay.
because otherwise, what good is there's not a peanut festival on Monday, but there's a big peanut festival on Christmas Day, and I worked that Christmas Day. But on Monday, that's a city holiday, but I'm on shift work. It doesn't matter when those fall. So
So maybe,
So Gabe, let me ask you, because I think there's two different ways to interpret what you're saying. There's city designated holidays, which are the ones named in the contract, versus the day the city may say, so what if we just say city holidays? Is that clear?
no,
Or contractual city holidays?
he's right about this, how these things happen. But let me just look and say here. Get there. All right. All of the things that are listed in here are all actual holidays. So if you say you get double time and a half on the holidays in the contract, they wouldn't get double time and a half on city designated days in lieu of. See, if you're just trying to make it once, you can't have both.
right, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and we're referring to the holidays that are listed in the
All right, so none of them are designated. These are actual holidays. And that's what you would want for shift workers. So if 4th of July falls on a Saturday, city workers may get the 3rd off, and they may get the 5th off because they would be off
Right.
anyway, so they get the holiday. But shift workers are working that day. So that Friday or that Monday was just a day. But on the day of 4th of July, if you had city designated, well, there may not be a 4th of July celebration on the 6th, and that would be the city designated holiday. So just me, if you get it for those named holidays and that are in the contract, because those are actually the days of which most events would occur.
Right, and so I guess, and tell me if I'm wrong, Gabe, I think the other thing though is Veterans Day is a federal holiday, and if there is a parade and something happens on that, that's not a holiday for the city, and I think that's what y'all are alluding to, see?
City
No,
observed.
no, I'm not arguing, I'm saying I agree, you pointed out a good point. These city designated holidays, all of these that fall on a weekend, city workers are gonna get another day in lieu of that, because that's their normal day off. But shift workers working the Thanksgiving Day, well, that's always a Thursday, but Christmas Day. So there's a big deal, they gotta have officers out for some big event. A city worker, if that's a Saturday, the city gives them another day for that, because that would have been their day off. You don't wanna get double time and a half on a city designated. Now, Veterans Day is not in here. Normally, you wouldn't get holidays not granted to you to be off. You know what I'm saying? We used to get Confederate Day off. You remember we used to get State of Texas Day off. Well, they don't get it. State of Texas gets off like 25 holidays. I don't know. I think it has to say
holidays identified in Article
and the
11.
contract. And that's it. You've got whatever number of those you got.
Are we trying to say designated or just the ones we recognize? Because the day we designated,
I think recognized.
right,
Yeah, the actual holiday
right.
in the contract, and that, I think that.
Christmas Day, not the designated Monday if it's on a Saturday.
Yeah, because you're
correct?
not on that schedule. Shift workers are not on.
So recognized, or, I
Yeah.
think he's meaning recognized.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
Okay.
we can refer back to the ones designated in the contract.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree, that's a good point. All right. You see, Ms. Castro's not here and you're already hitting a home run. It's not boding well for her. Not boding well. You leave the team.
Yes, sir.
Pinch hitter comes in, it could be a better hitter. Go ahead, sir.
All right, the last item that we wanted to just bring forward, well, it's not an item bringing forward, but we contemplated the detective language, and I don't think that we're wanting to move forward with that. That being said, it's my understanding that the department is going to take care of it via policy by the end of the month. And that's something that we wanted to put forward, as a matter of just, it's gonna be taken care of. It's not gonna be something that's gonna hang out there. We're just talking about it now.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you this. You're talking about the end of June. I don't want to hurry you. You've only had it a year.
Well, we were very close to putting it into policy, and it was just a matter of actually ironing it out with the president, and then we found out that it was going to
Okay.
be proposed to go in the contract. So we're real close.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Would you be opposed to saying, chief policy designated, we just plug in a date, or just something that says that we'll operate under the chief's policy, effective on day of the ratification of the agreement, and that'll be after the month anyway. Would that be all right? Something like that?
Did they leave? Oh.
What do you, tell me what the language is that you're
Here's,
wanting.
well, you have either two choices. You have the chief adopts a policy and we just reference to it,
Okay.
or you can take that out. What I would ask, is that what minimum has to be in here is if the chief adopts a policy, which whatever that is, which it'll have done before we vote, that we leave the language such assignment designation is not a civil service rank or a supervisory position. That part of that sentence, that keeps it from being a later grievance. So we're not controlling what the chief's writing over here.
Mm-hmm.
We're just saying we'll accept that policy, but we want to make clear that it's not a civil service rank or non-supervisory position. That keeps us from getting a contract grievance later over the policy. I can write that up, you can take a look at it. Go ahead and adopt the policy, it's fine, I just want to keep that clear, because I'm not writing, it's not like I'm adopting here, I'm just saying you're going to write it.
I think the department's standpoint is there's other non-paid positions within the department. For example, gang unit, bike officer, enduro. There's a multitude of units that the chief designates, and those are, he determines who goes there. That we don't see the point in including all that in the contract, since we all agree it's not a promotion, it's not a supervisory position. It's just the title of your job assignment. And we don't want to get into that where we're going to have every job description that's in the contract. Now, there are certain positions that are described in the contract because there's money and benefits that go along with it, like canine officer, like SWAT, like those units that have a monthly pay that is associated with them.
One second.
understand the point of it. Like I said, you have a gang unit officer. Are we gonna put them in the contract and say, well, okay, the chief can designate what a gang unit officer is, but it's not a promotion? I don't understand the point of it. It's really already in the contract.
How about this? Just let it sit. We understand your position, take it out. We understand the city's position, they'll adopt something. And let Scott, in the next few days, go visit with the chief and stuff, and get a better understanding and see the policy or something. We understand. But on our end, we just want to make sure that something we're not writing over here, it's fine. He'll write it. It doesn't bump into us and later a member comes in and goes, well, it doesn't say it's not, and detective is a rank in many police departments as opposed to SWAT or gang unit. That's my concern. I just did this on the county side because they called their FTOs corporals and then they started letting them wear stripes. And so we had to go and tell the county, I don't care, but now we had to clarify that being a corporal is an FTO. So just because corporal is a military rank, and that's the only, if you weren't using that title, probably wouldn't be. So anyway, how about we just sit there? If all else fails, take it out. We'll agree. And if we can get some little clarity, I'll just give it a couple of days. Okay. And we're still reading the red line. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I think that's the last item we had. I think the rest of it is just cleanup as far as
Okay.
organization of the contract and myself, Lily, and Doc.
Okay.
I don't know enough about all the healthcare. I do think it needs to be pulled out into a separate article, just because Article 10 is like 25 pages long, and maybe a separate article on assignment pays, not changing any language, just structurally. And I can do some of that.
Okay.
But because we have some old language phasing down, new plans, some of that can go, some has to stay. Sit down. Is that in your bailiwick? Visit, and even if you're wearing Oklahoma State colors today, that's not right. We're in Texas now.
I'm from Chicago, so it doesn't matter.
Just thought you might be taunting us over here. I'm letting it go today. All right.
I'm not loyal to any Texas team, sorry.
That's worse.
Sorry.
All right, so I'll look through that on some things. I think once everybody's got the red line, we'll look at massaging a few things. And like on some of that health care, like one of them was from 19. Is that old and needs to go? Maybe some have to stay.
Yeah, some of that we were looking at, some of it does go because that's from an old plan.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and so I'll let somebody knows about healthcare, figure that out, we'll move it to there and we'll have it. That'll give everybody a chance and our team to look at it. And I think, from today with a little more cleanup, I would suspect if we focus on it within a week, we ought to have at least could shape it and everybody has a chance. So once we're clear that that is the red line, then the parties you can start preparing the information for the membership on a vote.
Okay, so we will not meet a week from today, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll start, I guess, we'll work on the red line, y'all work on the red line.
Yeah.
Let me work my way through the healthcare part. Now, we'll have some follow-up from there. And then we can kind of tentatively, I guess, set up another meeting where after we've exchanged red line to the red line to the red line and come back
Yeah.
over here and kind of finalize everything from there.
You do that without a formal session, you don't have all the posting meals, because it is what it is. We're just,
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent months getting San Antonio straight. I mean, we kept thinking, well, we should have moved it, but nothing substantive, just getting things. It's an old contract. It just need to be re-paragraphed, and you have some things, or things that could be better readable. Okay, so I'll look at that, and you can work offline with the chief, HR, the manager's office. And when everybody says, okay, this is what we're gonna do, then we'll get it and send it out to the members.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Well, we don't have Miss Castro here to get a photo. All right, we'll do it for the signing.
Yeah, that one.
I'll make sure to wear this again.
Don't. You know, we don't like Oklahoma and Texas. I know you know that.